What does it mean to be British? We'll put that question to the political editor of The Sun. A very good morning, a very happy new year. Jack Elsom, how are you?
Jeremy, Happy New Year. I've been enjoying the show this morning, so congratulations. Honoured to be one of your first guests on it, as always.
Now, listen, I wasn't going to ask you this, but Christians insisted that I do. You just come back from a sun-drenched holiday. Do we allowed to say where?
Well, I'm surprised you can't tell by my bronze skin right now.
You look as pale as usual. I mean, you don't even look like you've been on broad. But anyway, right, this man...
Because of my complexion, I end up staying in the shade the whole time, because otherwise I just...
The wonderful Jack, ladies and gentlemen, went off to my island, to Barbados, where I used to have a home, and he took his young lady, you don't mind me saying that, and it was Christian who said that if he was a woman, not that he wants to be, and my man, he said, took me to Barbados at Christmas, I'd be thinking, you know, maybe a Richard Tice moment, maybe a proposal was on the way, Jack Elsom. Any news?
No news, but thank you for putting me on the spot live on the radio this morning. No doubt she'll be listening to this and will be incredibly cross. But no, you know what, actually, I think usually will be feeling very sorry for me, because those of us who have escaped the sunnier climes over the Christmas period, you come back here to this, you know, -2 degrees, and actually we take it more than anybody else because it's difficult to adapt. So you can get your violins out.
Oh, sorry, hold on a second. I think my heart's bleeding a little minute for you. Jack, you kept sending me photographs sitting on a sun-drenched beach eating cocktails, and I was getting up at 5 o'clock with screaming kids whose toys wouldn't work. But anyway, my friend, I would never put you on the spot. That is Christian. We're delighted to have you back.
Thank you, Christian.
Let me start, actually, with that question that's just come from nowhere. Starmer's speech yesterday, when he was doing the thing with Laura Kuenssberg, he's going on about the threat of reform and far-right and toxic and divisive, and what he said for him primarily about being British is about compassion, but he said diversity is what's about being British. I think that will rankle with so many people. What's your view?
Well, I think like most people in this country, I think that, you know, you can have diversity of race and diversity of creed and diversity of class, but I think that being British fundamentally is subscribing to a set of British values. And I think that's probably what most people in this country think of when they think of being British, that you believe in the rule of law, that you believe in hard work, that you believe in patriotism, and that you are happy to stand up for the values of what that Union Jack represents. And I think that Keir Starmer, and I wrote this in my Sun column a few weeks ago, I think what we're seeing now is the third regeneration of Keir Starmer, in which he is just trying to tack to the left to be as anti-reform, I think, as possible. Because we saw Keir Starmer serve under Jeremy Corbyn, where essentially he paraded himself as a socialist. He then ditched all of that stuff after he won that leadership election, and essentially really tried in the first few months of office to try and ape reform. Yeah. He quickly found out that, you know, you think about the things like the Island of Strangers speech, you know, big clampdowns on immigration, none of them seemed to actually work in shifting the polls, and he quickly decided, actually, I can't reform. I'm never going to be Nigel Farage. On the meanwhile, I'm losing droves of my voters on my leftward flank, and therefore I'm going to start doing stuff like talking more about diversity. I'm going to start calling reform racist. I'm going to start cozying up to the European Union again. He's seeing charismatic people like Zach Polanski tearing chunks out of his base, and therefore I think he feels that the only way he can survive is by pitting himself as the left candidate against probably Nigel Farage or Kenny Badenoch next time round. And that's what we're talking about, where you sort of have cuddly language like diversity. You saw that really start at the Labour conference speech, where he made a big pitch about, you know, calling reform racist and saying that British values are anathema to what Nigel Farage represents. I think that goes down pretty badly in the country, if I'm honest. And I think that it actually paints him as more out of touch than he believes. And I think as a strategy going into the next election, it's very risky, because if he's pitching himself as a I am not Nigel Farage candidate, people might go, but actually, if Nigel Farage is the anti-government candidate, I might go for that one and not you.
I think it's very interesting as well to be picking up on, and I said this to Richard Tice earlier, to be picking up on, you know, it's not, you know, reform is not British. I would respectfully suggest that, I'm going to sneeze, which is really embarrassing, but I would respectfully suggest that that's entirely the wrong take. And yes, of course you're right, you know, some degree of diversity. But you and I both know, Jack, that we've got to a point where if you go for a job, it's not on ability anymore. It's on about how many boxes get ticked. It's about promotion happens like that. We seem to be, and I said it just now to somebody else, we seem to be in a position in this country whereby those who do everything as we were brought up to do properly, pay your tax, go to work, don't shoplift, don't break, all those sort of things, are in fact penalised. And I think that's why the mood of this country has changed. I'm sure there are still many people, quite rightly, who hate the disparity between the rich and the poor and the divide. I get all of that. And that's what the Labour Party used to do. But I see a man who seems to change. You talk about third regeneration. He seems to change so often because he doesn't actually have in his DNA any belief or plan going forward. And I said it to you, I said it to loads of people during the election, and we had to be careful because of, when we're broadcasting, that. He seemed to make, I said this to you, he seemed to make his tent so big and invite so many people in that when you get the prize, you spend your entire time looking over each shoulder, front, left, and there's no conviction. I don't believe that this man believes anything. I think he just flows with the wind. I really do.
Sorry, Jeremy, my audio seems to have suddenly gone.
Are you there now? Can you hear me okay?
Sorry, one second.
Don't worry. Is he there? Oh, look at that.
Is that back? Is that working?
I can. Can you hear me?
Sorry, yeah, suddenly something weird popped up on my iPhone.
Probably one of those other newspapers that's jealous of your wonderful writing ability. He doesn't seem to me to have that sort of, I don't know, I believe in this and I'm going to do it at all costs.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that, and I've said this in this show before, but I think that it's the issue of fairness, which I think goes to the crux of why people are turning off Keir Starmer and potentially looking elsewhere. Because as soon as he came in, people saw him, take winter fuel payments away for pensioners and then increase money for train drivers. They see hotel migrants getting freebies, bed and board, Aspen cards and the rest of it while they're struggling to make ends meet. They are getting up for work at 5 o'clock in the morning, as you often like to say, while welfare payments are going up. And it doesn't seem that there's been anything to alleviate that sort of inbuilt unfairness in the British system, which, to be fair to Starmer, has not just happened under his watch. I think it's happened for a long time now. And that is why, while Starmer is the most unpopular Prime Minister in history, the last most unpopular Prime Minister was Rishi Sunak. And the one before that was Liz Truss, and then Boris Johnson, and then Theresa May. And it goes on. And I think it speaks to, yes, I think there's a unique unpopularity about Keir Starmer, but people have become pretty fed up with politicians for quite a while now. And I think that is because they just have seen a system that isn't working for them. But it's worse than that, because the politicians come in and they say they're going to fix it. You think about the tens of thousands migration under David Cameron. It's really sort of started since then, where people come in, they make these grand promises, and it's that sort of patronising phrase I keep using, the democratic disconnect, where people vote for something and then nothing seems to happen, or in fact the opposite seems to happen. You think about them saying they're going to rein in the welfare bill. Labour made a big pitch about this in opposition and said, well, actually, we're the only ones that can do it, really, because we can actually take the vested interests of the Labour Party on board with us. We can take the unions with us on side and actually do this. And of course, as soon as they come in, they bottled any chance of welfare and reform, essentially, I think, for a generation now. And so it's that sort of, I think, inbuilt unfairness in the system, which nobody's addressing, which is making people turn to other parties.
I couldn't agree more. Right, quick fire round, because you're a busy man. Back to work today. Quick fire round. On that Kunzberg interview, a few questions. Does he last 12 months? Keir Starmer, yes or no, Jack Elsom?
Do you know what? If I was a betting man, I would say yes, only because I would not underestimate the ability of the Labour Party to make a hash of trying to get rid of him. And I think that is what is keeping him in place at the moment. I think that after May, when they're going to be walking into the gunfire of those pretty dreadful local elections we're expecting for Labour, the ones they haven't cancelled, then I think that there will be enormous pressure and groundswell for him to go by much of his parliamentary party. It's whether or not a big hitter feels they have enough support to break ranks and actually try and amass those 81 MPs they need to force a leadership ballot. Many of them will feel very uncomfortable doing it 18 months on from Labour's election victory. I think it depends about who it is, because, there are some calls for Wes Streeting to go first, because then he doesn't allow rivals like Andy Burnham or Angela Rayner time to be able to summon their support. But at the moment, West Streeting, I don't think, has the support of the party members who ultimately decide who then becomes the Prime Minister and Labour leader, because he's seen still as much more of a Blairite and pretty opposite politics to lots of the very left-wing Labour membership. So, yeah, that's a very long-winded way of saying, I think, on the balance of probabilities, I think he probably will be. But
ladies and gentlemen, that is a journalist for you. That was the quick fire round. It was yes or no. It lasted 3 minutes. Right, next. I love you, Jack Elsom. Is Starmer in trouble over the Egyptian activists he welcomed back into Britain with that tweet? It turned out to be an anti-Semite and a revolting human being.
Yes.
Well, you can give me more on that. You've just gone yes. Why?
Because again, I think they're trying to blame the machine and the civil service for this. And listen, I do understand that every government faces problems with Whitehall groupthink and delays and dithering and vested interests. And there's a very good article in the Times by Keir Starmer's former advisor, Paul Ovenden, about this the other day. But ultimately, the buck stops with someone, and that is Keir Starmer. If it had genuinely been an oversight, one, delete the tweet which says that he is delighted to welcome this man back into the country.
Absolutely.
And two, give a wholehearted apology about it. Say, I'm really sorry, I didn't know this. We're looking into it. I've deleted that tweet. I retract my words. And we're going to try and take action about it. But we've had a pretty mealy-mouthed response saying, oh, nothing to do with me, Gov. We'll hold a review into it. And I think that the public who are looking at this are probably owed a bit more than that.
Final one, and we love you for being on, mate. Really appreciate it. I know you're busy. To you, what does being British mean?
You asked me that at the start.
I know, I'm just seeing if you're awake. Thank you very much indeed. See, Jack, I thought you could do that very quickly. Mate, thank you for coming on, really appreciate it. And I didn't mean it about the possible engagement. That was Christian Mitchell, executive producer of the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show.